And then the next step was to start blocking. So this is my first pass blocking here. There's not that many poses. It looks like there's the first pose change is on frame 6. And I was pretty much just watching my reference. I posed this out based on this frame right here. And then I posed out this one and this one. And here I added a few more breakdowns because I wanted to feel the offset in the hand grab. And if you see in the background, I grab it first with my right hand and then my left hand, which is a really nice thing to do in animation. I don't know if I did that on purpose. I may have or I may have not. But it's nice to have things not happening at the same time. So I kept that. So you can see here his hand is reaching. His hand is still in FK. And now it's in IK, this hand. So if I move his body around here, one hand is locked to the object. And here too, it's the same. And then now we have both of them connected to the object. So I'm basically adding a few more poses to get those nice 1-2 grabs. And then I'm starting the drive. So I've exaggerated this pose a bit from my reference here. Make sure this is the camera. Yeah, this is the camera. If you watch my video reference, this object isn't quite heavy enough for me to buckle my chest, but I wanted to show a little bit of that when I animated it. So as you pull here, I tried to collapse this chest a little bit more downward, more than I did in my reference. Hold on a second. It should all be in step keys. Select body. For some reason, this got turned into. Okay, there. Make sure when you're animating with this picker, or really with the NURBS curves, when you're trying to just do steps, you have all your keys in steps, so you don't have weird stuff going on. I selected all his body to select all his keys, but unfortunately, all his body keys do not include my locators, and these locators are what drives his arm. So I had to also shift select those and make sure those were in steps, just to make sure that you guys could see clearly what's happening here. Okay, so then there's a pose here, which is like the driving force. I planted this foot over. This is like a very important key. And then another 4 frames later, this is kind of the hang time where I've taken off, and more hang time. And now we have the plant. So this is the biggest movement. You can see I've exaggerated the amount where I'm dragging this heavy object a little bit more than I did in my reference. And then you have the swing. And I added a couple breakdowns here because this is where he smashes the door down, so I didn't want to just have pose 4 frames later. But basically, if I turn off this reference and you play this, you should be able to see what the action is going to be. And this is my first pass of blocking. So this maybe would have taken me 3 to 6 hours to do, depending on how fast I was feeling that day. And then I moved on to breaking it down. So I'm going to open another file and show you that. If there's any questions, okay, let me check. What do you do when you don't get exact reference? I'm assuming you mean I can't film it myself. I use the internet and try to find something close. And if you mean filming it myself, you never get it exactly right. Reference is simply that, it's reference. It's never going to be perfect. I use it as a guide, and once I start to spline, what I do is I turn off the reference and don't look at it anymore because it starts to become a handicap for me. When I finish splining and I'm happy with it, sometimes I'll turn the reference back on and watch it, or have the reference video up and be like, back and forth, is there something in the reference that looks better, or did my animation look better? And if there's something in the reference that looks better, I try to find out what it is and capture that. But normally, the animation should look much better than your video reference because your video reference is based in reality, doesn't have caricatured movement. So it's going to be boring. And that's why when you see rotoscoped animation or motion capture movement, it looks kind of floaty and even and not very good. So reference is really just that, it's a guide. And it's really, really useful for this stage that I'm doing right now. Let me see if there's anything else here. Reference on twos. Yes, reference on twos works in acting shots. for sure. You could even go on 4s because there's less complicated movement. The only reason I would break it down, my reference, is because it makes it less complicated and it makes you less inclined to follow the timing, because following the timing from reference can ruin your animation and make it look. You don't have to do that though. A lot of people don't. It's not necessary. It's just a really good trick, and it helps. I find it helps students a lot. Okay, so this is the stage where I make sure that everything's working in step. So all I've done now, if we step through this, is add breakdowns. So there's about 1 or 2 poses between all those keys you just saw. And this is my final stage. So this would be another 3 hours of work, 4 hours of work, say. So I'm just going to step through and you can see all what's happening here. I haven't used the graph editor much yet. Not that useful for me at this point. I'm just kind of trying to get the poses in there. So you can see here, if I was to look at the curves for this object, there's animation on it. Doesn't really matter if it's clean curves here, because these curves are relative to the chest, like you said before. So if the chest was going left and right for some reason, and I wanted this to stay still, I would have to animate it right and left at the same time. So in the graph editor, it would look all dirty, and it wouldn't look like a clean curve, but in Maya, it would look clean, right? So like I can show you, if I was to pose this over here, here, and then back over here, right? But I wanted this to go in the same, whoops. So now it's sort of staying in the same spot, but now we look at those curves, which would be, that was, I guess, the translate X curve, more or less. You can see it's doing a weird thing here where it's kind of going down and then it goes up for whatever reason and then back down again, right? And I'm sure before I did all these changes, it was probably more clean here because that was a more clean movement. So let's undo all that. And now we can check. But this is essentially, yeah, see, it was just going down. So I'm animating this, just kind of posing out where it feels right, based on the reference and what I think. Looks like I could probably pull up this full vector a bit, get that elbow up a little higher. See, I didn't do the best job on this. Can always make it better. I have my default tangents right now set to spline, but normally when I'm working in blocked, I set it to stepped, and then when I go to spline, I set it to spline. All right, so scrubbing forward here. Just here's where the spacing slowed down a bit, right? This is the hang time where I slowed down the timing. So you can see he's not moving as much between these keys compared to here. Those are the same 2 frames. This is frame 38, this is frame 40, and this is frame 30 and 32. He's barely moving. So this has some texture change in timing. It's going slow to fast, like the bouncing ball. Like the frame change from here to here. His body is not moving as much, but look at how fast the mallet's moving. And then the door breaks, and he comes back and swings back into his final resting pose, basically. Okay, so that's blocking.